And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here for the Lakers Fast Break, continuing our team previews right here at the Lakers Fast Break. Hopefully you are enjoying them so far. I got plenty more to come because we're only at the C's right now. And what a great place to start off with the C's, other than going to Charlotte, North Carolina, in some of the worst Southern voice that I could actually ever give out there. So please just erase that from your mind. But I'm here with a great guy indeed. Please go ahead and check out his great work, starting with the Charlotte Hornets fan site on FanSided, entitled Swarm and Sting. He's right there for you. Plus, he covers the NBA in detail. Among the many great things he does, it is Will Eudy. Will, great to have you on the program.
Hey, Gerald, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here. Excited to talk a little hoops, get into it. We'll talk Hornets. I'm sure we'll do some Lakers as well. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you on and in discussing Charlotte. In the past, I know Charlotte in recent years, I think the last time, I remember going to a boba place a few years back. And I remember going and seeing, while it was on the air, the play-in game for Charlotte and Indiana. And the LaMelo Ball was there. And it was, seemed like at that point in time that there was a future at that point in time for the Charlotte Hornets. You can say, okay, things are looking good. They got ousted. But you know what? The future is looking brighter. The young team on the rise, the future looking bright for that. Well, it didn't quite happened that way. Kind of went in the reverse direction, which I know wasn't the plan of the organization at the time. But a few years later from that, we're now in a situation where the team is starting to build up talent once again. Of course, you still have LaMelo Ball there, and we were going to get into a big discussion on him. But you do have Brandon Miller, who has come out to be a pretty good player since coming out of the draft. Also, as well, you've got a really, really promising young rookie that really did well in Summer League, actually garnering your team, or excuse me, the team you cover in the Charlotte Hornets, the Summer League championship. So with that, here in Vegas, by the way, with that, tell us about the mindset of Charlotte heading into this season after so many disappointing seasons, because it looked like it was going to go one way, but ultimately it went the other.
Yeah, like you said, back in LaMelo's rookie year, 2021, like you said, they made that play-in appearance, and they did the same thing next year, right? They ended up with a winning season that next year in 2022 for the first time since they made the playoffs in 2016. So, of course, everybody thought, yeah, they're on the up and up, right? They're getting better. The talent is there. Things are just going to keep getting better. And as you said, it's kind of fallen off since then. I think the mentality of the organization has shifted quite a bit since the new ownership took over in, I believe, 2023. So that was when, if you've looked in the news, you've seen it, those new management group took over for Michael Jordan. And ever since then, it just seems like they've been slowly kind of building what they see as the vision for this team becoming a winning organization. So it's been slow and methodical, and not everybody sees the vision necessarily because, again, some people are only going to believe it when, right, this team actually has a winning season again, and that's an understandable position. But I do think that they're slowly coming along, doing the right things and understanding, hey, it's not all going to happen in 1 year. We're going to have steps to success. And, of course, you're not always going to please the fan base that way, right? 19 wins, I believe, last season. And so for those who aren't keeping up super close, you're going to look at it and you're going to say, well, they won 21 games 2 seasons ago. They won 19 games last season. Looks to me like they're heading backwards. I think there's a bit more context to it than that, a little bit more nuance to it. But like you said, the steps that are being taken are going to pay off eventually. They had the idea of bringing in Charles Lee as the head coach. They had this overarching idea of Hornets culture and just getting guys who are winners, not only on the court, but off, who do things the right way, who take their process very seriously. That kind of sums up what they've been going for the last couple of years. And, again, you still have to get the wins. Of course, you still have to actually get there. But from what I've seen, I like what they have been doing so far.
Once again, I'm on with Will Eudy. Please go ahead and check out his great work all over the FanSided community, but also as well, of course, in Charlotte, Swarm and Sting. I want to ask you this. Brandon Miller, obviously he was part of that draft, that infamous Victor Wembanyama draft. I've had recent talks about in Portland about Scoot Henderson. Brandon Miller was picked second ahead of Scoot, and so far that looks to be for Charlotte like it was a winning proposition. He looks like he had a very promising rookie year. Last year kind of got offset a little bit with injuries. Where do you see his career progressing? Do you see his career progressing in a way that might make him more of a cornerstone with the team, or do you think he is set eventually to become more like a average to high rotation player?
I think when you look at Brandon, there's a lot of potential, and there's certain things he's going to have to do to get to the point where he reaches that ceiling. But as you said, from day one, I think that he has exceeded expectations with the Hornets, because 2 years ago, the thought was, if people remember back to this time, Scoot Henderson was by and large the consensus pick at number 2 behind Victor Wembanyama. I remember thinking, I'll admit it, at the time, I thought Scoot was the pick as well. But since then, I have definitely changed my perspective, changed my view on that. Brandon, I think, ended up being absolutely the correct pick. I think, like I said, I think he has kind of exceeded what people expected out of him from day one. That first season in 23-24, he really was thrust into a bigger role in the rotation right away because of injuries. So the last 2 years, there's been a ton of injuries with this team, but he kind of got a bigger opportunity with Terry Rozier and a few of those guys being out from the start. And he kind of settled in really nicely from the start, getting to his spots and making shots, that mid-range pull-up that he loves so much. He just kind of found his spot right away. And he progressed so quickly that, I think there was a lot of righteous excitement for what he can become as a player. Based on what I've seen from him, I think that along with LaMelo, he definitely has that ceiling of an all-star type of player. We're talking, right, the ultimate ceiling of what he can reach. I think he could become an all-star, maybe even like a fringe, like third-team All-NBA type of guy one day. I do think there are things he's got to work on to improve his game in order to reach that ceiling. But I think that the blueprint is there, and I think that he has a lot of skill that he can tap into.
All right, we got to talk about it. LaMelo Ball, a guy that is truly and uniquely talented. The ability to score at a high level, can shoot. Well, he likes to shoot, that I know that, but he can shoot efficiently if he wants to, but usually doesn't or hasn't for the better part of his career. But has also a ball vision, as far as like his brother does have a tendency that he can be able to find people when he needs to as well. He is at that time, like you said, as a rookie, kind of looked like he was putting everything together to be an elite player. Even last year, he started off averaging over 30 points a game, lighting the Charlotte Hornets right there as far as their team, as far as excitement is concerned. But along with that has come a lot of aggravation, frustration, injuries, but also just a little bit of patience by the organization. I can sense wearing thin when it comes to the LaMelo Ball experiment. Do you see this playing it out long term, or do you see a future where LaMelo Ball may not be there?
I think the questions about his future with the team have been very real at various points. I think that you've seen a little bit of that frustration with certain people in the organization. But ultimately, I do think there's still a belief that this can be our guy for the future. I think that, like you said, the injury piece is a very big one, right? That's perhaps the biggest one when you say, can we trust this guy to stay healthy year in and year out? It's been a concern. It probably continues to be a concern. But I think there are just as many concerns with rather just the on-court stuff, right? So like you said, this is not to say LaMelo is a problematic player. It is to say that there are things within his game that I think the organization says this makes us think about, as you said, can he be the guy for us going forward? So as you saw last season, he definitely tried a lot harder on defense, but that has been one of the problem areas for him, arguably the biggest problem area, right? So when you talk about the difference between a guy's impact offensively and defensively, there may not be a guy in the league with a larger differential. Maybe you say Trae Young, but I think when you talk about LaMelo and just his ability to be this all-encompassing offensive machine, but then on the defensive side, he does struggle so much, right? So last season, as I said, I think we saw him try harder. He definitely engaged more on defense earlier in the season, especially. At times, that led to him picking up a lot more fouls and even fouling out several times, which was very concerning. But I think that that's still not enough to say, I don't know about him as the Hornets franchise guy anymore. I still think that as much as he delivers on the offensive end, it is enough for the Hornets to still be holding on to this for the time being. And we've seen them reaffirm kind of their commitment to LaMelo a few times, right? They had the opportunity to seek deals for him. We really haven't heard any concrete evidence that they sought out a trade. It's mostly been from the fan side of things. Hey, they should look at this trade. They should look at dealing him this place. I think that, like you said, with him leading the NBA in fourth quarter scoring this past November, right, earlier in the season before he got injured, we still see that incredibly high ceiling that he has, right? I think that the best path to him becoming, right, the Hornets guy going forward and them just kind of regaining that faith in him as their franchise player is if he can get back to pretty much where he was in his second season, right? That first season with James Borrego as the head coach, he was a little reluctant to play him at first, and then he does start getting more minutes, starts really just getting into a groove. And then that second season was, I would say, where he was at his best, right? If he can become a better version of that second season LaMelo Ball, if he's shooting more efficiently, that's a big thing, is the efficiency. If he can improve on that, I think it's going to go a long way toward getting back to where he was before. And like you said, pretty much like Brandon Miller, becoming an all-star caliber player, becoming maybe even like a fringe all-NBA type of talent.
I see the patience with the Charlotte Hornets organization similar to what they are doing or probably going through in New Orleans with Sion Williamson. I see a similar pathway where both just can't stay on the floor. Both are extremely talented, but both are enigmas because of their actions, both on and off the court, especially with LaMelo, who's been accused of being selfish, like you said, defensively, a lot of issues there. In LA, we have Luka Doncic, who, obviously a very offensive centric player. Defensively, it's been an issue at times, but when it comes to LaMelo, I still see a chance where he can prove and break out if he gets his game more focused. He can take that next step and become a player that a team can build around. It's just dependent on whether or not Charlotte wants to wait around for that to happen.
And to be fair, I think that a big part of this discussion too, like you said, you've seen a lot of the buzzwords when it comes to him being whatever, selfish, like you said, or not a winning player. That's a big one. I would just like to say for the record, I don't agree with that stuff. I do think that when it comes to winning player, you can say, okay, he's the number one option on the team and they haven't been winning the last few years. Yes, health factors into that, but I think that the roster construction is a bigger topic. I think that if you looked at the last 2 seasons of what the Hornets have had to work with roster-wise, hasn't been great. And it's looking a lot better now that this front office has had, especially under this new regime, has had some time to work on building just a more well-balanced roster from the ground up.
Mhm.
I think that NBA is a copycat league. So right now, everybody's thinking, how can we get more like the Oklahoma City Thunder, where they have all these ball handlers and all these guys that can be versatile on the floor. There's not many specialists left in the league these days. And it seems like the Hornets are following very smartly that pattern as everybody else is. I think from an unbiased perspective, the roster is considerably more sustainable than it was the last several years. You're going to not have nearly as much issue when there are injuries. Again, the last couple of years, when you would have a Terry Rozier go out, when you would have, a Brandon Miller miss a game, the options further down the bench were not nearly as good. And I think now they have lessened the impact the injuries will inevitably have on them. So when you talk about that, I think that LaMelo has not had as good of a roster to work with in any season of his career as he's going to have in the upcoming season. I think that's going to matter.
Once again, I'm on with Will Eudy. Please go ahead and make sure you support what he's doing today at FanSided with his articles all around the league, but also as well focusing on the Charlotte Hornets as well with the Swarm and Sting. Actually, that's a pretty cool title for a FanSided page. My compliments on that. I will say this, though, when it comes to the Charlotte Hornets, you're right. Things are looking better, and I think in a better direction for them. I know a lot of talk was made about Brooklyn and the Nets getting 5 first-round picks. And, your mileage may vary on what you think of those 5 first-round picks they ultimately decided upon and whether or not they can improve their team. But lo and behold, a little bit behind the scenes, or if you under the radar, the Charlotte Hornets didn't get 4 first-round picks, but they got 2 first-round picks and 2 very high second-round picks. So my question to you is, especially with Kom Kneuppel, who looked really good in Summer League here in Vegas, and what you have as far as Liam McNeeley, you have Ryan Kalkbrenner, you also have Sion James. They seem to really wanted to go down to the Duke tunnel, if it were, of course, North Carolina. But be that as it may, what is the real possibility of the Charlotte 4 ultimately being better than the Brooklyn 5?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that draft class and what the front office was able to do with bringing in all 4 of those guys. So first of all, right, they could have easily just traded away several of those picks, which obviously they did trade for the pick that got them McNeeley. But the fact that they wanted to bring in 4 new players and, correct me if I'm wrong on this, sign them all 4 to standard deals, which is pretty rare. You don't see that very often, especially 2 second-round guys in James and Kalkbrenner. I think that shows a lot of commitment to youth and getting younger, as well as just the belief in those guys. So, of course, 4 separate players bringing their own unique strengths, but they clearly had some type of investment in all of them to the point where they said, hey, we're going to bring you on for a standard deal. We believe that you can be part of this rotation in time, right? It may take some time in the G League. It may take some development, but we think that there's a place for you here if you can earn it. There's a lot to be excited about with, I think, all 4 of those guys.
And especially, again, what you have with Kom Kneuppel, who I really think can be right away a key part of your rotation, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, because of the fact that Charlotte, which I thought last year going in, really had one of the better center rotations as far as depth is concerned, with Nick Richards and also as well Mark Williams. The drama that played itself out as far as the Charlotte Los Angeles Lakers trade that ultimately ended up being overturned by the Los Angeles Lakers. They went back on the deal, didn't like what they saw. supposedly a medical physical that didn't go as well as they'd hoped. Supposedly, you take that for what it's worth. But you know what? Those guys are now in Phoenix. So now the center rotation in Charlotte is now the center rotation for the most part in Phoenix, which is still very weird to me. But be that as it may, Ryan Kalkbrenner could come in there, and everybody talks about Kom Kneuppel being a major part of the rotation right away as the number 4 pick, but don't short Ryan Kalkbrenner because of the fact that the center depth position in Charlotte is so light, he could come in and take advantage of it.
Yeah, first of all, we have to talk about the fact that the Phoenix Suns just love taking Hornets players for some reason.
I guess so.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but there's been quite a pipeline over the last year or so, as you said. Yes, and when it comes to definitely a big opportunity for Kalkbrenner, right? That has been a major topic of discussion with this team, right? Like you said, last year, Mark Williams and Nick Richards on paper, right? A fantastic young starting center and a great more tenured backup. And now it looks completely different. That is probably the one thing that I would say consistently Hornets fans are griping about, saying the front office, Jeff Peterson, did everything right this summer except for fixing the center rotation. I've written about how I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think, but there are obviously 3 options on the roster right now. You're going to have Moussa Diabate, who pretty much etched his way into the hearts of every Hornets fan last season, coming from a two-way guy on the Clippers, not really playing much out there, getting an opportunity as a two-way guy in Charlotte. And again, because of the injury piece, just right away finding his way into the rotation and making a big impact. I mean, the guy was snagging rebounds left and right in pretty much every game back in November and December when he was, I think, playing the most.
Yeah.
He's just a hustle and heart guy. He just, it sounds like a total cliche, but he just leaves it all on the floor every time. I don't know if there's many guys on the roster, if at all, that play harder than him every single game. That is why I think that he might be the day 1 starter for Charles Lee. I could see them going a few different directions, but my guess is that they'll roll with Moussa as the day 1 starter. I think they say, okay, we have the most combination of knowledge of what this guy does for us in our system and just overall production, right? So beyond that, you do have Ryan Kalkbrenner, who, right, will probably play a bit in the G League, will have some opportunity with the NBA club. He'll get his chances, but I don't know if the coaching staff is going to right away say, hey, we trust this guy more than we do Moussa. And then, of course, the last one is Mason Plumlee, familiar name in Charlotte, second stint as a Charlotte Hornet. And, there's mixed opinions on Mason Plumlee within the Hornets fan base, I would say. I think there's a contingency that does like him a lot, recognizes that he is a limited player, but still likes him for his quirks and, the ways that he is impactful. I think everybody remembers a couple of seasons ago in Charlotte that one standalone jumper Mason made at the end of the shot clock that made Eric Collins go crazy. That's the memory everybody seems to call back to. But, Mason, he's got a bit of age to him at this point. He's not, 26 years old anymore. And so I think the Hornets will probably lean on him more as a, lesser minutes type of veteran guy, maybe more in that Taj Gibson role that he played in Charlotte last season. But we'll see. I think Charles Lee has some stuff up his sleeve, and there's a few different things he could do with it.
The Plumlee line is, for now, going to end with Mason. But, they have kids coming up. Their Plumlee line could continue. You don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, if they got 6'10", 6'11" kids coming around, there could be a continuance of that. But for now, the Plumlee line will end with Mason. So we will see what happens. But with the additions also, like you said, with Mason Plumlee coming back, you have Colin Sexton, you have Trey Mann, veterans that are coming onto this team, Pat Connaughton as well. Your thoughts on this? If everything went right with the team, everything panned out, the young kids really started to mature, LaMelo Ball stayed on the floor, became the leader and distributor that I think a lot of people in Charlotte were hoping for. Brandon Miller breaks out right away. Miles Bridges gives you a solid 18 to 20 points a game. And then, of course, Grant Williams also as well, hitting threes. And, of course, you get solid production from the center position. If everything works out, where do you see your team ending up? Or where do you see the team ending up?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when you talk about a best case scenario, that's maybe a term that's going to cause a little bit of PTSD within the Hornets fan base because unfortunately there's been a lot of talk of, well, if everything goes right, and things inevitably do not go right, but that's life, right? We're not going to nitpick too much. But as when it comes to the best case scenario, I think for several years this fan base has thought, well, if everything goes right, we could sneak into the playoffs. We could be in that play-in range. We could, maybe even get a top 6 spot, if things fall the right way. I think that all of those things could still be on the table. But of course, it's always going to be wise to temper the expectations a bit, right? With that being said, I think that what we have right now in the Eastern Conference is we have a conference that's wide open. I think that, Cleveland won 64 games last year, but, they're not making it to the conference finals again. The Knicks get to their first conference finals in a quarter century, and they still don't make the finals because the Indiana Pacers were demolishing everybody a few short months ago. But now there's no Tyrese Halliburton. There's no Jason Tatum. There's no Damian Lillard. Several big names, of course, that are not going to be around probably at all next season. So I don't know if anybody knows who's going to win the East next year. I don't think it's going to be the Hornets, but I think the Hornets will have a much better shot at finishing a little bit higher in the standings than in the previous few years. Now, again, this goes back to the first thing I said of, I know it's to Hornets fans, it's going to seem very scary to get optimistic and to say, well, this is our year because it's a yearly discussion. But I do think that from an unbiased perspective, this season's circumstances are a bit more favorable for them to end up in the top 7 or 8. I think if you want to look at a best case scenario, right now, I think on FanDuel, the odds are for over-under for wins, I think is set at 27.5 right now.
Yeah.
My thought that is, if everything goes right, it's definitely going to go over that number. I think you could look at, right, like you said, if you get that kind of wonderful breakout third season from Brandon Miller, if you get, LaMelo Ball playing shooting more efficiently, being the best version of himself, like you said, Miles Bridges is doing what he does. They figure out the center rotation, right? You're getting good contributions from your rookies and younger guys. I think you could probably talk about a season that looks something like the 2021-22 year, where they won, I believe, 43 games and came a game away from the playoffs. That's probably the best case scenario. But again, you just have to take these things day by day and week by week because there's a whole lot of hype that comes with a great offseason and comes with, this core being what it is. But you just can't get ahead of yourself. And Hornets fans, I think, know that.
Once again, I'm on with Will Eudy. Please go ahead and support his work on FanSided, including the Swarm and Sting, part of the FanSided experience. But before we head on out, Will, great conversation. I just cannot thank you enough for taking the time to speak to me on it. But I do always ask the NBA experts around the league their thought on the team I cover year-round in the Los Angeles Lakers. Skinny Luka, as I've probably said dozens of times now, which is now actually, I think he might have to change his name to Skinny Luka because it seems to be that's the case for him. But he's been playing well overseas, doing well so far, looking really good. A lot of people have him pegged, especially here in Vegas, as a top 5 candidate for the MVP. You still have LeBron, age 41 season. You don't know if this is going to be his last or not. He's going to leave you in suspense on that one, but he is still able to play at a very high level. And then you have, as I've said before, 6 or 7 players that are playing for a new contract. So they'll be incentivized. They'll be motivated to, at least during the season, try to prove their worth and value to not only the Lakers, but the rest of the league. So with that, Where do you see the Lakers coming up this season?
Well, first, I want to touch on one thing you just said, which is the guys entering contract years. I always think that's an underrated point of discussion. I think when guys are in contract years, right,
They're healthier. Yeah, they're healthier. They kind of like play a little bit, have a little bit more of an edge. It's just funny how that works. Well,
it can be interesting sometimes. Yeah, I think that those guys definitely have some added motivation, and they are playing for their next payday. Which, if any of us were professional basketball players, I think we'd be thinking the exact same way. As for the Lakers and what they're building, I mean, first of all, if you have Luka Doncic fall in your lap, that's, how on earth does that even happen? But it changes the direction of a franchise, right? So there's no more Anthony Davis, but it doesn't matter. Now you have a top 5 guy in the league. So I liked what Rob Pelinka has done in terms of like just building that roster to better suit, I think, Luka. Marcus Smart, I know there were mixed opinions on him, but I know he's not 2022 depoy Marcus Smart anymore. But I still do think he's a positive because he's that great point of attack defender that the Lakers needed. I think he helps out with Luka's defensive deficiencies, right? So you can hide Luka a little bit more on defense. I actually did like the addition of Ayton as well. I know people have their reservations about Ayton and his effort level and that kind of stuff. I think that he's what Luka needs. He's that Derek Lively, right? Like kind of center that can just rim run and catch lobs. He doesn't need to be a whole lot more than that. He can play within his role, and he can just kind of be that great complement to Luka. So my thought is that the Lakers kind of pulled off a great offseason, honestly. And yeah, you didn't need Mark Williams. You ended up getting Ayton. I think you're in a solid spot if you're JJ Redick and the Lakers. Like you said, LeBron, year 41 season, you don't know what's going to happen, but you work out what you need to work out. If he needs to get traded somewhere, you get something back, send him back home to Cleveland for his, final ride off into the sunset. And at the end of the day, when it comes to playoff time, you're going to have Luka. And I think that after he has kind of a full year under his belt of being in LA and learning the system, learning how to play for JJ Redick and getting a better squad around him, I think they'll be much better positioned come next April than this past April when I feel like they just ran into a pretty bad matchup with the Timberwolves.
Well, there you go. Great thoughts indeed. It is Will Eudy. Please go ahead and support him wherever you need to go ahead and check his work out. But before we go, it's what I like to call the cheap plug, so you can specify exactly where you want to go ahead and have our audience or people watching this video check out your great work.
Yeah, if you guys want to give me a follow on Twitter at Will C. Eudy, and then all my work you can find at FanSided. We have all 30 teams we cover through the FanSided network, and then as well on my Substack, which is the Eudy Report. That's eudyreport.substack.com. That's where I do some more of my more personalized, more human interest stories. So go give it a shout.
Absolutely, indeed. Please support Will Eudy with his great work. Will, it's just great having you on the show. If I may, I would love to bring you back on during the course of the season, or if you want to do another team preview, you're welcome to do that. But I would love to go ahead and have you back on here during the course of the season to gain your insight on what's going on with the NBA season. But any last thoughts before we head on out?
I think it was a great conversation, Gerald. It was great to be on. And hopefully we can talk some more Hornets, some more Lakers. We've got some interesting storylines between these two teams now. I think, after that failed trade, there's always going to be something, at least with Dalton Connect. Mark Williams has moved on, but there will always be some interesting
Does not seem like Dalton has moved on from it, Will.
Well, I guess we'll have to see about that, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the way he's been playing or the way it's affected him. And then we saw him in Summer League. I saw him here, absolutely atrocious. And your second year in the Summer League, you're usually taking that next step. And there's a lot of concern for Dalton Connect right now that trade or failed trade or whatever you want to say kind of trade has really messed him up. Hopefully he can just shake the cobwebs out and move on from it. And Mark Williams looks like let's hope he can stay healthy and prove prove the Lakers wrong for doing it by having a great season in Phoenix. That's what you need to do. And for Dalton, I hope he can get over it and do the same. But we'll see. Will, I don't know. It's we're kind of concerned here in Lakers land. I'll just tell you that.
I think things are going to work out. I think that everything that happened the way it happened was going to be for the best. And I understand being in the situation for those guys was very weird. You don't see that happen ever. So it was disorienting, I'm sure. And it probably threw them off their game a little bit, especially for, Connect, a rookie, especially after having a great first half of the season. So I think everybody's ultimately going to end up where they need to be, though. That's my thought.
Fair enough, indeed. Will, it's been great having you on the show again. I would love to hear your insight when you're able to stop on by, but cannot thank you again for being a part of what we're doing right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.